Okay guys, behind us right now we've got a 2021 model Ford Ranger, and we're going to go about installing our tub mounted dual battery system into this vehicle. So this system fits all Ford Rangers and also the BT50s while they were the same as the Ranger, which up until 2020 where they changed and went with the Isuzu D-Max. So it fits them up to until that point, and all of the Ford Rangers up until the current ones. So we're going to show you what's in the kit. We're going to show you where it goes, and basically we'll do that now. So it actually sits in this position here. You'll notice on the side of the box there's a few brackets, and what that does is it actually utilises parts of the forward body to distribute the weight. So we don't have all the weight of a heavy AGM battery sitting on that tub where it could potentially crack the tub floor. A bit of the weight's utilised by mounting to the tie down point here, and another one on the back utilising another mounting bolt on the side of the tub. So it really distributes the weight, so it's not all on the floor, it's back on these sides as well and shares a bit of the load. So this battery box is made locally in Australia by TLR Products. We're using the Australian made Red Arc charger, and this is just a kit that you can go and install it straight into your own vehicle. So we're going to show you how to get it into your own vehicle. I'll just show you, we'll just sit into position and I'll show you where it sits though. So it's going to sit in here. Part of the installation is actually taking a cut out of the tub liner to allow it to sit right flush against the body and help with that weight distribution. So once we do that, it's going to be sitting in back behind up till about this rib here. And you'll notice that rib is in line with the side of the wheel arch. So it actually doesn't foul up if you want to put a drawer system in here. You've still got room for your dual sliding drawers to come out of there. It doesn't foul all the common drawer systems that you can get for a vehicle. We'll go through the sockets and the ports on it now. On this end we've got an Anderson plug, and it's in a flip up cover. You can see a grey Anderson there. You'll notice on the front we've got solar input. So that's designed to plug your solar panels or your blankets straight into, whether that be a permanent one on the canopy roof or a fold out blanket. Next to it we've got choice of 2 sockets, and that's totally up to you. This customer's having an AGM battery, so he's gone with a voltmeter, tell him how charged it is, and just a 12-volt socket. On the back he's going to have a fridge plug. Just flip that around. So he's using an angle fridge, so we've got an angle fridge socket there, and there's the brains of the unit, the Australian made Red Arc charger. In this case it's a 1225D 25 amp charger. So that's going to act as his DC-DC charger. It's his solar controller when he plugs solar into that Anderson port, and it's also his isolator when he stops, separating the 2 batteries. So we'll open up the kit now and show you just what's involved in the electrical and the installation. So as we take the lid off, obviously this is where our battery is going to sit into position. Let's just take the harness out. So you'll see it's all pre-wired, ready to go straight into the vehicle. You'll notice when we're working with a Ford Ranger, we have a variable voltage alternator. So part of this harness is not only connecting to the main battery to power up the system, but it's also going to connect into the fuse box into the vehicle, and that's how we're going to get our ignition wire. So you'll notice as we run down this harness, we've got a split there. Basically, once we get up under the passenger seat, we're going to route this into the cabin of the vehicle and across to the fuse box under the driver's knee. The other part of the harness is our main power cable that goes all the way up to the main battery under the bonnet. We connect our fuse holder in there, which is in the kit here. Our fuse holder, we mount that up the front. We've got all the fixings and all the accessories that you need to get this kit into your vehicle. We've got a fuse box, another fuse here for the auxiliary battery, the hold down clamp for the auxiliary battery, and then we've got 2 smaller fuse holders, these ones here, that are protecting our fridge socket and our dual sockets at the back. So that's a quick run through of what's involved. So let's get into the installation into this vehicle, and we'll show you how to get it into your Ford Ranger or BT50. Okay, let's get stuck into the installation of this kit. Firstly, you're going to see that this one has a tub liner, and that makes it a little bit more difficult, but we're going to show you how to do it in this case. If you don't have a tub liner, it's as simple as sitting it into place and bolting it into position. But we'll show you what's involved if you've got a tub liner and how to go and trim it. The first thing, whether we've got tub liner or not, is we're going to take out our 3 mounting points that are existing in the Ford Ranger body. So you'll see we've got a tie down hitch here, like a U-shaped bolt. We're going to remove that. I'm going to remove our 3rd bolt here, and that's where our tub mount is going to be bolted up to. So let's take this one out first. Now we're going to keep these and set them aside. So these are just Torx bolts, Torx bit. Next, we're just going to sit our tray into position. And because we've got a tub liner in this one, we're going to actually have to mark now where we're going to need to cut for our tray to sit into position. So, got to keep in mind, probably the most important thing to get a nice neat cut in this case is we can go right up against the tub liner there, and we can make sure that we're in line here with our back bolt. But we've got to remember, we don't want to really cut straight here, because as we take the cut out of the tub, the battery box is going to go further back. So to play it on the safe side, I'm probably going to cut about this rib, and then if I need to take more to come out, that's always better than taking too much from the start. So we'll cut at the back of this rib, but basically we want to mark the end points right now, because that's never going to change. We know that if we're butted up against the mounts that we're going to utilise there, then this isn't going to change. So I'm going to mark this end and this end. So with a permanent marker or some kind of marking tool, make sure we've got this foot hard up against the back of the tub. Now I'm just going to put a little mark on each of those ribs. Now I'm just going to do the same down the back. Now once I've done that, take our lid off. Now we don't need to cut, you'll see the lid was right up to there. There's no point in coming all that height. Basically we just need to get it up to the level of this, and keep it in mind once again that not only is our tray going to go further back once we get into position, but it's also going to sit down onto the tub. So we can go even a fraction lower than this basically if we need to. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark it. In this case on the Genuine tub, it's basically on that ridge right there. I've got a cut out. So I'm just going to mark that height for now, and then we can take that box away and prepare for the cutout. Okay guys, you can see I've marked my lines now. That's the edge of the tub there, edge of the tray here, coming up, and I've just kind of traced around that battery box there to see where I need to cut. So like I said before, always better to take less the first time. If you need to take more, that's way better than taking too much the first time. So our tray, when I sat it in, is coming out to here. So I'm just going to start by coming in to this rib behind there, and that'll allow the tray to go further back, and hopefully we'll get a nice flush fit. If we need to come a little bit more, that's no big deal. So I'm going to use a nibbler tool right now if you've got something like this. Otherwise you might have to persevere with a hacksaw or some kind of blade to get it out. But we'll just show you how to cut that out now if you've got a tool. Okay, we've finished making our cutout, so you can kind of see there, I'll just get this out of the way, so So you can see what we've had to take out to get our tray into position. I've put that back in and we can now see that it's all going to sit in. You'll see that my initial cut of coming back one rib has actually worked out perfect. I have to actually force it in, so it's right flush up against there. So, and you can see where that rib finishes is actually inside the wheel arch. So definitely not going to foul up any draw systems. It's actually inside the tub liner wheel arch area. So the next thing we do with the install is once we place our tray into there and lock it into position using our 3 holes here before we drill through the floor, we've got 2 options to get our cable to the front. Now, if you've just got a canopy or just an open tub, it's quite easy. You can just exit straight out the front of the tub. So each tub has an inner liner, like metal liner, and then the outer surface of the vehicle. So basically we've got two panels right there, basically, the outside of the vehicle and the inside of the tub, which we're looking at right now. In the front corners of these tubs, you can often there's a little gap in between the outer and the inner, and you can just thread your cable up and it comes down behind the cab, basically, down near the chassis rail. And then once we're down there, we can just follow to the front along the chassis rail. In this case, we've got a roller cover in this position, and these are a big bulky motor system. No way we can get to that location to exit the tub. So the next option is to use a cable gland, which will be included in the kit. And because we've got 2 panels here, we can drill a hole through this panel, use a cable gland to get us out of the canopy or out of the tub area and to the outside so that we can get to the chassis rail. So I'm just going to show you the way it is now is all you would need to do to exit the cable out the front. But we're going to take another little cut out of here just to give us a spot for our cable gland. So we'll take another cut and I'll show you how to go about getting this cable gland into position. Okay, for the installation of our cable gland, we're just going to sit our tray into position, making sure we're sitting in the location, and I'm just going to mark a little bit more to cut out because I basically want to put my cable gland in this position. It's going to be going that way through the tub, so just enough to access the bare metal. So let's just come up, make a nice neat shape, and then we can remove the tray. And I'm just going to take that little extra cut out of there. Okay, so once again, this isn't needed if we can exit the tub up the front, but in this case it is needed. So that's where we're going to screw through, or drill through I should say. So we're going to put a hole through there, and this is a 25mm cable gland, so we need to drill a 25mm hole. That's going to allow us to exit our main cable through this gland and get us to the outside of the tub. Okay, so now that we've taken our cutout for the cable gland, sit our tray back in, we're just going to mark our hole. So my cable gland is going to sit in that location. Just going to mark a little X. Where I need to drill. And always, before we drill anything, we want to make sure that we're clear behind there. And obviously we want to make sure that we don't have a drill. We're not going to drill all the way through to the outside of the vehicle. Definitely don't want to do that. So I've got under there, I've seen that nothing's been installed there. It's all free and clear. I've got plenty of room for my cable gland to sit up in there. So I've checked all of that, and we definitely want to do that because we don't know what anyone's installed into the vehicle. We want to make sure it's a clear cavity. So I'm going to go and drill a pilot hole first. There's a couple different ways that you can drill through here. You could use a hole saw, or my preferred is like a borer. So they're like a step-up drill, so it slowly steps up in size, and we want to get to a 25mm hole. So the thing that we want to make sure, and the reason I've grabbed these 2, is you can see one's much longer than the other. And we want to make sure that we're not using a drill that's so long that it's going to hit the outer side. Even if we dinted the outside, we don't want to do that. So a good way of knowing that is I've got up there's heaps of room to put that cable gland up there, and there's still a gap past there. So I'm looking on here and I can see my 25mm marker, it's way shorter than the cable gland, so there's no risk of me touching the outer side of the vehicle. So they're two things that we want to be aware of. So let's start by drilling our little pilot hole. There's our pilot hole. I'm just going to step that up a couple normal drill bits just to get a bigger hole for us to work with. Stepping up again. Okay, there you go. So I've put some bigger drills through now, so we're ready for our step-up drill. And we're going to go ahead and drill that out to 25 mil, so I can see that's my third one back. Okay, there you go. We've got a nice round hole there, and that's why I like these. Actually, make a nice round hole. Often a hole saw can get stuck in its teeth, but these make us a nice round hole. So what we want to do now is put some rust proofing paint or something on that surface, and then that's going to allow us to put our cable gland through. Now we're going to be going from the other way, so I'm just checking this for size now. But basically we're going to just see the nut on this side, and our cable gland's going to be coming through from the other side. So let's go get some paint. We'll clean up our mess here and we'll get into the next step. Okay, now that we've cut out our tub liner, we've drilled our hole and we've prepared it with some paint, some rust proofing in there, we can now go and actually physically mount our dual battery tray. So I'm going to sit that into position, lining up our holes, pushing it down. See, that one's in line, pushing as far that way as we can. Okay, so using the bolts that we kept before, one of them, we're going to start by putting this back one in, and we'll just do it up finger tight initially, just till it's caught onto the thread. And you'll notice in the kit, just because it's a bit hard to get a Torx bit into there, we've actually replaced them in the kit. We've just given you normal bolt heads. So up to you. If you've got a tool that can easily get in with a Torx head, then you can use the original ones. If not, you can replace them with these bolts. So we're just going to lay in and reinsert these two into position. At this point we're just going finger tight still. So now that we've got them finger tight, we can just go and do these up. So a Torx bit on the back and lock them into place. And if you've chosen to use the 8mm bolts, just a 13mm socket or a spanner will get in there. And we can do those up securely. There we go. So we've got our 3 mounts now from the forward body. There's one last mount that we need to do, and that's a hole through the floor. So you can see inside this battery box, we've got a hole or location right there. So what I'm going to do is just mark that, and I'm going to drill an 8.5mm hole through there. So using a drill, I'm going to run a pilot drill first. And like always, we always check under the body, make sure nothing's been installed. We don't have any water tanks, air tanks, anything, any accessories that have been installed. It'll be clear from a new vehicle, but we do want to check every time. So we'll just jump under, check that, and then we're right to drill. Okay, that's my pilot hole. So now I'm just going to drill an 8.5mm drill bit. Now the first thing we want to do before we put our bolt through is we're going to suck out that mess, and we're going to put a little bit of paint in there or some rust proofing on that hole. Okay, so now that we've cleaned out our shavings, we've put some rust proofing in there. In the kit, you're going to see an 8mm bolt and nut. So we're just going to grab that out. You see 2 washers and a nylock nut. So we're going to use 1 washer on this end through the body, and from underneath the body we're going to insert the nut and nylock washer. And this may require 2 people, just an extra hand. Once you get under there and put it on, you might need someone to hold the head up here while we do it up from the bottom. So I'm just going to lay under there and put it into place. Okay, so I've got that on finger tight now. I'm just going to go and get a socket to hold it from each side, and we'll do that up secure. Okay, so just to secure the last bolt, would be easier if you have a second person, but let's try and give it a go on our own just so you can see if it's possible. What we're going to need is 2 sets of sockets though, or a spanner and a socket. So if you've got a spanner and a socket, it might be best to use the spanner up here, but I've got 2 sets of ratchets here. So I'm going to put this one on the bolt inside against the back wall. And if that sits there nicely, like a spanner might as well, a ring spanner, if we jump in underneath, that should lock itself and we should be able to secure it up. So I'll jump in underneath with this one and we'll secure it into place. Okay, there we go. So we've secured that on our own. So just by holding it up the top, I've got underneath and secured that. So our battery tray is fully secure now. We've got all 4 mounting spots secured. So it's time to start running the electrical cables. Okay guys, now that step 1's complete, we've got our battery box secured into position. It's not going anywhere. You can see it's sturdy. That part of the install is done. It's now time to run our electrical cables. So everything in the box is all pre-done. We don't really have to worry about that, but we need to get our main cables up to the engine bay battery and also to the vehicle fuse box inside under the driver's seat. So in this case, we can't get through the front of the tub, which would have been the easy option. We've got the cable gland, which will come in the kit as an option. So if you can't access the front and just drop straight out, we needed to come through the side wall. So the first thing we're going to do with the cable gland, now we're going to have the cable gland situated that way so that it doesn't stick too far into our battery box and foul up on the battery. It's going to be going through that way from the other side. So the first thing we want to do is run all our cables through this nut, which is going to be the only part on the inside wall. So grabbing the end of our cable, we need to thread these both through the nut like this. And we're going to thread that all the way. Past our joiner. And basically just leave that on the harness for now. The next step is going to be same thing, grabbing the end of our cables and now threading them through the hole, which that should just drop straight down underneath the vehicle. So we can pretty well just thread that all the way through. just making sure our cable's going to sit where we want it. Go through there. I'm just going to leave that nut there for now. So now I have to jump underneath or outside, and we're going to thread all of our cables through this cable gland, and then we can insert it up into the body. Okay guys, you can see our cables all the way out on the ground now. So what I need to do is continue to thread our cable out of the gland. So let's put this one through first. And this bit is a little bit tight, so it is easier too if we take this gland off, or the end of the nut, and there is a rubber grommet in there which will probably get pushed out. So there we go, that rubber grommet's come out. So it's probably easier to leave that out, and we'll deal with that later. Put that through. So this is the 25 amp kit and the 25 mil, which is a coincidence, cable gland suits it. If you had the 40 or 50, it would be a bigger hole, bigger cable gland that we'd be dealing with due to the bigger cable size. So we're just threading both parts of this all the way down. And once we get to the join, we'll just have to even up the cables. So I'm going to pull the slack of that one through. Like that. And this part, we just need to maneuver the heat shrink just to get it through. Oh, that's gone quite easily actually, so that we've got that first part through. Now we're going to do the same with the nut and the rubber washer. Evening up those two. I'm just going to separate them here, do the rubber washer over the join, and then do the nut. Just getting it past that heat shrink. There we go. So we can now reinsert this rubber into the end of the cable gland. Just pushing it back inside the prongs so it's in there. And then we can just loosely do up our nut. We don't want to do it up tight yet. Now that will fully clamp down on this cable and secure it, and it'll also protect it from the cutted edge that we've done with the drill. So now we can go lay under there, insert that through the hole, and this step once again handy with two people, having one person on the inside holding the nut, and we can do this up from underneath the body. So let's go and insert that into place. Okay guys, I'm just going to get a hand for this part, so I'm just going to have someone holding the nut in here while I lay underneath and put it through the hole. So I'm just going to lay on the ground. So now that I've done up the cable gland in the nut through the body, you can see it still moves because I haven't done up that last nut that goes onto the rubber cable gland. Once I do that up, it locks the cable into position. So while I can still freely move that in and out, I'm going to lay my cable into position, the route that I want it to take. I'm going to put the excess through. Once I'm happy with how my cable's sitting, then I can lay under, do up that final nut, and that'll lock the cable into position and secure it. So now that I've done up that nut, you can see our cable's locked into position. So that means that it can't freely move around, can't rub anywhere. Also helps keep the water seal, so that's actually clamped hard on the cable, so it's watertight tub still. And you can see it's locked into position. So now that we've done that, we can go ahead and route our cables towards the engine bay. Okay guys, now we're going to run our harness towards the front. So a couple little suggestions. The first one, because we've got two harnesses that we're running towards the front, it's probably easier if we actually tape these together initially, just so that we don't have one go on one side of something and getting caught up. If we tape them together, we know that both harnesses are going to follow the same route. So I'm just going to start by doing that. Now it's also handy because we're going to lay under there and it's a little bit dark. If you've got a torch to take under or a head torch is a good suggestion to wear just so that we can light up while we're under there. So I'm going to jump under. We've got cable ties that are included in the kit and we're going to use those to secure the harness as we go. But initially we'll just be routing it and then we'll come back and do the cable tying. So let's jump under and have a look. So firstly, we've come out of the tub here and it's come straight down. So the first thing we're going to see is a main forward harness. I hope you can see that through there. My finger's pretty well touching it. That's a forward wiring loom. So straight away, we're just going to duck over the chassis, start following that loom. And basically, as we're threading to the front, we want to follow and think about where we're going to cable tie to. So we want to follow that route that we're going to cable tie to, and then we can come back later and do the cable tying. So initially, I'll be laying under here. I'm going to come straight over the chassis rail. And follow that cabling. So you can probably see my fingers there. I'm just threading the cable, following that electrical harness. I'm going to pull all that excess through. Okay, so now that I've threaded it over the wheel arch, I'm in front. I now want to lay in front of the wheel and continue. So we're at the rear wheels now. Finding the end of my cable again. Just making sure I continue to follow the electrical cable that I can tie to. Okay, so I've threaded my harness through, following this electrical loom that we can see here just behind the fuel tank at this point. I've threaded it through, continuing to follow that loom until I've got past the chassis mount at the back of the body. So what I'm going to do now is I've grabbed it here, I'm just going to pull my slack through. So we're not worrying about securing the loom at this point, we're just getting it through. We'll come back and cable tie everything. So you can see I'm just using one hand at the back to feed it up, my other hand at the front pulling it through. Just being careful, if it gets caught, just go back or I can adjust it. And then we're just pulling the excess cable through at this point. And just probably not pulling it too tight. We want to have a slack to be able to cable tie, so we're just getting it roughly into position. So now that I've got to the back of the cab, this is where the Toyota harness that runs under the chassis actually enters the cab. So we're going to be continuing forward along the chassis rail at this point. Okay, so we've come out past that body mount. You can see our chassis rail here. So at this point we don't have any electrical harness to cable tie to. So there's big cable ties included in the kit that'll go through these holes of the chassis rail and around and secure the harness to the chassis rail. Like we can see, actually Ford has done with the roller shutter. So this is an accessory that they've added, that roller lid, and they've secured their harness using cable ties around the chassis rail. So we're just going to do the same thing. So all we want to do at this point is just make sure that our harness can be secured to the chassis rail. Make sure we haven't gone around anything. So we're laying into position. Now as we get down here, you'll see a little grommet in the floor. And that's actually worked out exactly where our joiner is, and there's a reason for that, in that one part of the harness now goes through here into the cab and the other half continues to the front. So this one has that roller cab on the back, roller shutter on the back of the tub, and this accessory has been fitted through this cable gland, so we're going to have to come through with it. Normally the Ford would just have a blank gland that you can just go straight through. So we've got to tackle this now. We're going to have to come through with this one. Okay, so this grommet that I was just talking about, if you want to know exactly where it is, we're basically under the passenger seat, the front seat. So what I'm going to do is pull that out of the body now. So I'm just pushing in one direction. Maybe a flat blade screwdriver might help. But there we go, I've got it out. So what I'm going to want to do is get our harness through. So we're going to separate our harnesses now. We can see the two. We want the lighter of the two harnesses that has the male spade. So at this point, we've where we taped up at the start, our two harnesses, we're going to want to remove that tape. So we're separating the two. And at this point, we want to separate the ignition one. So that's the one we're looking for, the male spade on the end, ignition labelled on it. And we want to get that through this grommet with the cable that Ford's put in for the roller top on the tub. So we're going to get that through and inside the cab now. So before we do that, I'll just jump out and we'll show you how to get the kick panel off in the passenger seat well so that we can get our hand in and find that cable. Okay, so here we are at the passenger's door on the front of the vehicle, and that's where our cable is coming through the floor. So I'm just going to show you how to get these trims apart. So the first thing we need to do is take this kick panel off, this little section here. That's going to give us access to the grommet, which is about here under the passenger seat. So once we thread it through from underneath, we'll be able to reach in there, grab our cable. Basically, we're going to run it through here, through this kick panel, so we're going to remove that one. There's cabling under here that's accessible, so I can feel all the Ford harness under there, so we can follow that across to the other side to the fuse box under the steering wheel. And that's going to allow us to cable tie to that Ford harness and secure it into place. So let's start by taking this trim off. Now to do that, it's all just plastic clips. So there's two plastic clips either end that are going into holes, just in the other trims. So one in this trim, one in this trim. And there's also two other plastic clips that go through the floor. Often those clips will stay in place when we pull this out, and we'll need to take them out and reinsert them in the plastic. So basically, because it's all just plastic clips, we're just maneuvering with our finger getting under there. So if I flex this, there we go, I've released that, and there should be a clip in the center here. There we go. So now, because I've got one end off, I can just slowly work my way. Maybe moving back and forth might help them release, like that. And then just get my finger under there. So that's how easy it's come out. So one has come out for us, the other one has stayed in the body there. So when that happens, just a pair of pliers or pointy nose, in this case cutters, just get under that lip and we'll just remove it from the body. So just flexing it out, like so. And then we want to reinsert it into its position so we can see where it came. So if we click it back in there, it's going to sit back in nicely. So that's our first thing. We've got that trim off. Next thing we want to do is remove this trim. Once again, there's a plastic clip there. So we can start by this from this end and just pop this up, get our finger under there. And it might help to just pull the actual rubber out just to give us a bit of room there. And that's actually exposed another clip that holds it in. You can see in there, we've got a clip in the body. So that one we can tell needs to come this way. So we need to pull that out towards us. So I'm going to get my hand in behind there so that I can pull it towards me, maybe a finger in here, and just flex that out. Like so. And now we've got our kick panel off. We can set that aside as well. You can see that's given us full access to Ford wiring. It's where they run their cable. Another accessory's already been run through here as well. So basically we're going to be doing the same. Just running our accessory, following that harness across to the other side. So let's jump under, get that cable through the grommet, and we'll find it back in here. Okay, so we're just going to show you using the original grommet out of the Ford Ranger that comes out of the floor. So this is what you would see if no accessories have been installed. So basically what we want to do is get our cable through this grommet. So all I'm going to do is just cut a little star groove in there. A little nick that way. And a little nick that way. Now that goes up into the floor like that. So all I'm going to do is thread my harness through and bring it all the way down to the joiner. So that's where our harness is under the floor and it splits direction. So what we're going to do is basically thread our harness through that hole that we took the grommet out of and reach in under the seat and grab it. So I'll just show you. So I'm going to reach in under there and feel the hole. Put my wire through that hole that I can feel under the body. Once it's in under the carpet, and what might make it easier is just releasing the clip on this part of the panel too, on the rear trim, just so we can get our hand in under here. Just flex that a little bit. Once I can lift up the carpet, oh there it is, it's right there actually. So it's quite easy. So there's the cable coming out. So now I can go and pull that whole excess through and we can reinsert our grommet under the floor. So there we go, we've got our cable through and now we can go and route it towards the driver's side. Okay, so we're going to continue with this harness now towards the driver's fuse box while we're in this area. So basically we're just threading our cable, same as before. We're not securing it at this point, just getting the route. So we just want to make sure we're following the harness so we can tie to it later. You can see the forward wiring here, so I'm just following it. Pulling that excess through, just leaving a bit of slack for later. And if you can see up under here, it's a bit hard to see actually, but there's Toyota wiring going to the fan motor and everything. So we're just going to make sure we're following this. Just going to feel it. Yep. So I can cable tie to it. And then when we get to the center part of the dash, I'm just going to feed that through and hopefully be able to grab it on the other side. So I'll put my slack through there now. And then I'm going to walk around to the driver's side and pull that through. So now I'm at the steering wheel. I'm going to reach in under there, see if I can find it. Feel it there, just get my hand on it. So there we go. Pulling the slack across. And once again, just looking under here, we've got a steel plate that we can cable tie to, and we've got some wiring. So just making sure we've got a nice route. Go over the air duct here. Just making sure it's out of the way of the driver's feet or any moving parts in this area. And we've got something good to cable tie to. So once we're in this location, this is the fuse box here. So we want to take this panel off, which is just a matter of pulling. There's a little handle there. Just pulling down, and there's 2 feet in there that we just pull towards us. That releases our fuse box cover. So you can see this is the fuse box, and this is where we're going to get our ignition feed. So I'm just going to, I can see through here where my harness is. I'm going to feed it into this area. Ready for installation, there we go. Okay, so you'll notice in the kit there's a couple fuse holders, outer circuit fuse holders, and that it depends on the model. So this is for the older Ford Ranger. In this case, we're working on a brand new one. We need this outer fuse. So what that does is basically alleviate us needing to tap in or cut any wires or splice into any cables in the car. So with the key off, we're going to remove the bottom fuse in this fuse box. So it's a 20 amp fuse there. All we're going to do is simply pull that out, replace it with our fuse holder, and what this fuse holder does is keep the original Ford circuit active, but it allows us to have a little tap, that's our smaller fuse there, that we can power up the red arc charger with. So I'm just going to pull that out, insert my fuse into there, push it into place, and you'll also notice in the pack is a bit of heat shrink. So what I'm going to do is put that down the cable. I'm going to plug these together. Like so, and then I can push that heat shrink over, and that's just going to make sure it's a good connection. It's not going to come apart, and make it as insulated as we can. And that's now powered up the red arc on ignition. So once the car is turned on, the red arc will make sure it's turned on, and that will bypass the variable voltage alternator. So now just using a blowtorch or a cigarette lighter, some kind of heat gun, we're just going to shrink down this heat shrink. So now that we've fully wired it up at this end, we can go about using the cable ties supplied in the kit to secure this harness all the way back to where it came through the floor. Okay, so now that we've finished cable tying the whole way along, we can go and nip the tops off those cable ties and put all our panels back together. We're actually done inside the cab now. Okay, so now that we've finished securing our harness into the cab, we can go and put our panels back together. So I'm going to start with this kick panel. You'll see the 2 plastic lugs that we saw before, but there's also a locator here. So you'll see a little plate coming out of the body. So we'll want to line this up first, goes into the plate, and then that'll allow us to line up our plastic clips. So I'm just going to lean in there. I can feel that tab's lined up. And now I'm going to line this one up, and I'll probably push that one in first. And then I can see the hole in the floor there for that last plastic clip. Like so. So that's got our kick panel fully secured there, and then we can go and put the rubber seal back into place. Just push that down with our hand. And lastly, we've got our little kick panel to go back on. So we want to line up these 2 holes with the one in our floor. You can see a cutout in this panel. It goes around the seat there. So that's the way we need the panel to go. So the flat edge is facing the outside of the vehicle, and that cutout is going around the seat mount. And then once we've got it in position, just a little tap. You can hear that plastic clip go in, and then I'm just going to work my way down. Next one, and then the last one. So there we go. Our trims are back together. That part of our electrical harness is done. Now we just need to continue routing our main harness up into the engine bay. So I'm going to go and pop the bonnet now, and we'll jump back under and show you how to do that. Okay, so the second part of our harness is the one that we're running up to the front. So I'm just going to lay under the car, I'll take a camera under there, and we'll just show you where we're going to basically follow. So we're continuing to follow the chassis rail, and then we're going to get up through the engine bay. So let's jump under and have a look. Okay, so here we are, facing the front of the vehicle. So you can see our front wheels are there. This is our chassis rail. This is where we came through the body. So we're just going to follow the chassis rail here. We've got a body mount here we can go over. And then I'm just going to show you what we're looking at once we get on the other side of the chassis rail. On the other side of the chassis rail, we've got a little guard here where all the lines have been secured to, and that's protecting us from the heat of the engine bay, the moving tail shaft here, and the four-wheel drive for the front transfer case. You can see accessory harnesses have been run up here. So basically we want to stay inside of this guard. We're going to follow that, so we're going to thread our cable up, push it up towards the front into the engine bay, and once we've got enough slack up there, we should be able to grab it from the engine bay. So just coming in through the wheel arch now, you just see where we're talking about. So behind this rubber shield, that's what we could see underneath the vehicle. You can see that accessory harness we saw underneath the vehicle. So we're basically just going to go behind this protection where all these other cables are running. I can feel hosing there. So we're just coming up inside the suspension, and that's basically going to get us up to where the battery is. You can see some electrical cables there, there's an earth cable. So we're just going to follow what we can through there. And that's going to get us up here. So we're right at the back of the battery, fuse box. That's right where we're looking at. So that's the direction that we're routing our cable, and that's that same accessory harness we've seen going in the same direction. Cable tie to this clip is a good one. Around this one here, it's a good point to secure to. Keeps it away from anything hot or moving, and that's what we want to be aware of in this part of the install. Okay, so using the cable ties in the kit, we're going to start to secure the harness now. So I've just pushed the cable up. I'm going to secure it and show you which route I've taken through the engine bay. So I'm planning to mount my fuse holder right here, and there's screws included in the kit that will mount the MIDI fuse holder here. So with that in mind, I'm just going to start by securing to the earth cable, using the cable ties also supplied in the kit. Okay, so just going to show you a close-up of where I've routed down the back of the engine bay. So you can see I've come down the harness, the back of the fuse box, under that bracket to secure it. And then I've used these 2 plastic clips. So I've tucked it in there so it's away from these fuel lines, so it can't touch them. I've put a cable tie around the base of that. Hopefully you can see right there. And then also another cable tie just over in this location, down around that plastic bracket, also keeping it away from those fuel lines. And that's got us back down to the chassis rail basically. Okay, so now jumping down to the rear, behind the rear wheels, we'll just look up under how we've secured it to the electrical harness. So there's our fuel tank. And you can see our electrical harness, so we can put cable ties around that existing Ford electrical harness, and this is our harness here. So you can see how I've secured that. Just above the spare wheel now. And then I jump over the chassis rail at this point, and you can see our trailer wiring here secured to there, and then that's back up to our cable gland. You can see our paint there, our rust-proof paint we sprayed through. So our cable gland going through the body. So that's basically how we've secured the harness all the way to the rear. Okay, we're up to the 3rd step in the installation. So we've done step 1, we've secured the tray. Step 2 is to route our cables up to the front of the vehicle. The last step is to make our electrical connections. All the connections are done in the kit. So we're going to install our battery now and show you how to make the electrical connections on the rear. So we'll do this end first and then we'll move up to the front. So firstly, I'm going to pull our cables out just to give us room to sit our battery in a position. So I'll just sit them out to the side. So it gives us room for the battery. And then I'm going to go ahead and lift the battery into position. So this is a 120 amp hour AGM. Fits most brand 120 amp hour AGM batteries, but the physical dimensions are on the website if you want to check. So I'm going to lift it in. So now that we've got our battery into position, first thing we want to do is to secure it using the hold down clamp. So you'll notice in the kit, we've got 2 J brackets with wing nuts on the back. And then you'll also notice the fuse holder with our auxiliary battery marked on it. So that becomes our hold down clamp. Just to make this easier to see, I might just get rid of this. Just remove that handle so we can see better. So if I undo my wing nuts off the J bolts, I'm going to start by getting the back one just because it's probably a little bit less accessible, and then you'll be able to see the front one a bit better. So down in here you'll see 2 little tabs. So on the front you'll see 2 little tabs in there. The same thing, I'll just put my thing down so you can see it, the J bracket. So that's what we're trying to hook under. And the same is on the back. So I'm just going to get the back one first. Okay, so I've hooked that back one under. I'm just going to do it up finger tight, just so it doesn't fall out, using our wing nut. So that's locked our back one into position. And now the front one being a lot easier to see, I'm just going to do the same there. So I'm going to drop that J bracket in between those 2 lugs, like so, so it hooks under, and then do it up finger tight. And that's going to lock our battery into position so that it can't bounce around or move. And at this point, with a pair of pliers or a shifter, we can do them up reasonably tight without crushing the battery. But we also don't want them to come loose. There we go, so you can see how secure that battery is in there, it's not going anywhere. Now that we've done that, we can go ahead and make our electrical connections. So we're going to see 3 of each, 3 negatives, 3 positives. So we're going to have one for our charger, and our charger's negative, and then we've got our 2 accessory harnesses which are separately fused. So you'll see single socket, that's our one at the back on its own, the fridge socket, and our double socket, which is this one here. So we'll start with the positives. Now this battery, this may vary depending on the battery you've got, but this one you can see it's got threaded studs in it. So it's come with these bolts. So each battery will come with its own fixing points. And this one's come with some 8mm bolts. Sit one aside, and I'm going to keep this one. So I like to put the charger on the bottom because it's the highest current source, and then the other terminals on top of it. So I'll grab my 3 positives, sit these cables out of the way. So charger being on the top, I'm going to put it through an accessory socket, another accessory socket, and then through the charger, so it's attached to the terminal of the battery. And now that's set up finger tight. So I can go and do that up now using a shifter. Each battery might have a different size bolt or nut here. So this part may vary slightly. This is a hardcore 120 amp hour AGM battery we're using today. Okay. So now that the positive is fully secure, we can move on to the negative. So our other 8mm bolt, same idea. I'm going to use the negative for the charger as the first point of contact to the battery terminal. Just making sure our cables are sitting all nice. So we're going to go and put it through our accessory harnesses first. So we've got 1, 2, and then our charger earth. At this point, we've actually powered up the Redarc charger. You'll notice at the back we've got our lights on it. I'll show you that closer soon. And go and do this earth up now. Now at this point in the pack, we've got fuses, so here's another pack that comes with the kit. You'll see mounting screws for the fuse holder up the front and fuses for our accessory harness. So we haven't inserted those fuses yet, and these fuse holders are actually dead at the moment. There's no fuse in there, so there's no power to anything. Once we have fully connected and 100% made sure we've got our negatives on the negative, the black post, our positives on the positive, the next thing we can do is go and insert these fuses, and there's a spare one here for each socket as well. So we only need 2 of them, 2 can stay. And we're going to put these in. So that's livened up our dual socket. This one's going to be for our fridge socket at the rear. Straight away we can see that we're powered up. We're showing 13 volts on that voltmeter, so we know that we've got power to these sockets. Now that we've made the electrical connections, just using some of the cable ties in the kit, we can go and neaten up those harnesses, get them all laying nice, and then we can put the lid on. Okay, now that we've tidied up our wiring in here, we've cable tied it all into position, the last thing to finish off in the rear is to install our lid. So it just sits over the battery tray, just protecting everything, finishing it neatly. And then we've got the 4 bolts that hold that lid into position. So I'm just going to go ahead and put them on finger tight initially. Okay, so now that they're all finger tight, we can go and secure them with an Allen key. Okay, so that's the first part of our electrical connections. We've fully finished the box in the rear. One last connection we need to make is to our main battery up the front. We left that till last. So we'll just head up to the engine bay and we'll secure our harness, our fuse holder into place, this one here, labelled main battery, and we'll connect to the main battery and power up the whole system. Okay, we're up in the engine bay now, ready to make our final electrical connection to the main battery. So we're going to connect to the positive terminal, which we just flip over this cover and exposes all the positive connections under there. We're probably going to utilise this one here, but the first thing we're going to do, this is the cable we ran earlier. We're first going to connect it before we connect to the battery, so we don't want it to be live at this point in time. We're just going to take the 8mm nut off this end, secure it to the harness that we ran. So this is not powered at the moment, it's totally separate to the auxiliary battery. So just going to check both of them, close over our cover, and then we're going to mount this fuse actually first before we connect to the battery. So I'm going to mount my fuse right in there. I think that's a good position. There's lots of different options, but in the kit you'll notice 2 screws provided. So if you've got a screw gun, we can screw this down here. If you don't have a screw gun or anything, we can cable tie these into position, but mounting is always good. Okay, so our fuse holder's all secure there. Now we're just going to keep in mind we need to get to here, but we want to keep away from hot and moving stuff as normal. So I'm going to go behind the harnesses. We've got so much electrical stuff to tie to here. So I'm just going to face it back, go behind that cable so I can secure to it. I can secure to these ones. And I'm going to route it up nice and close to them and come in there. So first thing we can do now is disconnect this, which is a 13mm nut there, and just be aware we are on a positive terminal now, so we don't want anything to be able to touch. So I'm just disconnecting that. Now that that's loose, I can do it with my finger, and I can route mine across, sit it onto there. Now this point is straight to the positive terminal of the battery. So I'm going to hold this towards there, because we're going to try and tuck it in there so that we can put this lid back on. So I'm just going to hold it into place while I do it up so it doesn't spin. And do this up quite firm. And then using the cable ties in the kit, I'm going to cable tie this following the harness, so you can see all of our electrical cables in here, just making sure it's secure to them. And that'll basically allow us to put this cover back into place. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to secure this. Use a few cable ties here. Secure it to the next part of the forward loom. You can see there's a clip there actually on the battery tray. So that's a good spot to go next to, because it's going to be nice and secure there. So I'm going to put my cable tie around that harness, but close to the clip for a secondary securing. And maybe one more onto this harness. And then once again, we'll just cut our ends off. Okay, now that we've secured our fuse holder, we've connected to the battery, we've actually fully completed the install. It's all done. So the only thing left to do now is to test our system. So we'll head on down the back and we'll show you what lights should be on the red arc now and how to test the full system. Okay guys, we're going to test the system now. So we're down the back. First thing we're going to see, we've got an AGM battery in this instance. So we're going to use A profile on the charger. We're going to see the A profile light lightly flashing in the background. Now, if you had lithium, if you chose lithium at checkout, we would have put it into lithium profile and you would have the Li light flashing. So they're probably the two most common profiles in this kind of setup. But AGM, we've got the A profile light. So that basically means we're in isolation mode right now. Means that the two batteries are separated. Anything that's running off this battery isn't flattening the car battery in any way. It's a totally independent battery bank. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go and start up the vehicle, and we're going to see it go into DC-DC charger mode where it's charging from the vehicle. So I'll go and start it up now. So you can hear that the engine's fired up now and running, and you might have seen on the lights on the charger, we've now got the vehicle light solid on. Down here we've got the stage light solid on, which that may either be solid or flashing depending on how charged the battery is, what stage the charger's in. So we basically just want to see our vehicle light, our stage light either solid or flashing, and our A light will be solid on as well. And that's telling us we're now charging via the vehicle. In this case, with this customer's battery bank, he's gone for a voltmeter, so we can actually confirm that if we come down to the other end of the battery bank. We're going to see the voltmeter saying 14.5 volts, so we also know that it's well and truly charging at that point. If we go back down to the charger, what I'm going to do now, while we're driving along, one of the features of the Redarc is it has green power priority, which means it will take as much power from solar as it can before the vehicle. So I've got a solar panel out in the sun here. I'm going to plug it into that plug. So if we had a permanently mounted solar panel on the roof of the canopy and we had it plugged into here, it will actually take as much solar as it can from the sun while you're driving along. In this case, we're just using portable. So we can see we've got solar light on, so it's charging via solar. The vehicle, we know that it's using actually both modes at this point in time. So if I go and shut the vehicle down now, so I've now turned the vehicle off, and that's actually gone into isolation mode straight away. That may not always happen instantly. It may take, depending on the charge of the battery, the load on the system, it may take a few minutes, 10 minutes even, to click out, but it will eventually go into isolation mode. So the vehicle light's now gone off, which means it's isolated from the vehicle. If I disconnect the solar panel, we'll see it go into full isolation now. So I've just disconnected that Anderson. There we go. So now it's not receiving any charge source at all. Not receiving any charge source. It's in isolation mode. We're just back to that A profile light flashing. So that's the full test of the system. We've tested it works on vehicle charge, the DC-DC charger. It works on solar controller, and it's in isolation mode, the three main modes of the Redarc charger. So there we go. The installation is now 100% tested. We can plug our fridge in and start touring.